Okay, so this is going to be a really fun episode. I'm really enthusiastic about this one
Yeah.
because we're talking about Godo and HK-47, and we're starting with Goto. And if you listen to our Patreon, I took a quiz, and out of all of the many KOTOR 2 companions, the quiz was like, no, I think that Godo is going to be your companion. And I don't like Godo. Like, I forget about Goto. And it's like, why do I have to spend time with him? Why am I stuck with him? So we're just
Yeah.
going to talk about Goto first to get it over with, and then talk about HK-47.
That's right. Yeah, I had Cassia. You need to calm down. Don't be quite so excited when we're talking about your favorites here. Godo, who is your companion, but that makes a lot of sense if you think about it, right? Because you didn't want Godo to be your companion. The crew of KOTOR 2 didn't want Godo to be their companion. You just turned up anyways, and you had to take him along whether you wanted to or not. And yeah, that pretty much sums up Godo. No, I'm just kidding. So Cassia, who is Goto. He is a droid who is in charge of infrastructure planning, which sounds really exciting. Kids can get behind it for sure. Manufactured by Aerotech, and this particular model of droid was used to rebuild places, after the war. So Goto was in charge of, I guess, rebuilding Telos 4 to, like I said, to help rebuild the Republic, and basically had uh, a couple of rules that it had to follow. It had to rebuild the Republic, and it had to not break any of the Republic's laws. So that didn't compute with poor Godo. Like short circuited himself and decided to like take over the galaxy in means of preserving it. It's very dictator esque. But what do you think, Cassia? Who is Godo? What are they bringing to the table for us?
Well, Goto, it's kind of funny because, like, if you look at A New Hope as episode 4, um, it's basically the same droid, maybe a little bit bigger as the one that I think it says made in England on it. Like, if you really look, in A New Hope, it's the torture droid.
Mm.
So
Hmm.
a lot of thought was put into this Goto design. Um,
Yeah.
so it's kind of like it's supposed to be a twist. Like, you think Goto's a real person, like a crime lord on Nar Shaddaa, but it's revealed like he's a droid, and he ends up joining your party. And I was kind of thinking about it the last few days. It's like, why does he join our party? Like, no one likes him. I kind of wonder if they're trying to get on, like, because it's a different kind of studio from BioWare who did the first KOTOR. Maybe they're like, Goto's gonna be your big ticket, like, robot. Everyone's gonna be talking
Mm.
about Goto. Maybe they saw like the love people had for T3 and HK, and they're like, we're gonna have our robot, and or I guess droid, like, and everyone's gonna
Yeah.
love Goto. But I think the opposite happened. Like, people are like, why is Goto in a group? Like, there's like 47 members of this party. So
Yeah. Yeah, definitely not going to bother taking Godo out outside of the Ebon Hawk after he joins up for sure. Um, uh, yeah, it's hard to say. Yeah, maybe on one hand they were looking at it and saying, we need to have our own droid because every kind of Star Wars thing that it exists and gets made has like its own kind of like marquee droid that it has, within the show or the book or the game or whatever. So maybe that was what the intention was. I don't know. I guess I've said a couple of times I like that none of the droids really get along. So I like that part. I like that Godo and Beodor's droid have like these little fights, and that Godo hates that the little droid that Beodor has. So I kind of like that, but I don't know. I guess it's fun that he was in charge of infrastructure planning. A lot of KOTOR 2 revolves around rebuilding the galaxy, so to speak. So this droid, I guess, is in charge of that. And the best way to do that, put out some bounties on the Sith and the Jedi. Decided he needed to get them captured. taken in and not able to fight, and that's going to help rebuild uh, society, I guess, so to speak. But a lot of the bounty hunters didn't really pick up on that memo and just started killing these Jedi and Sith willy nilly, so to speak. Reactivated this HK-50 factory, which we're going to talk about a little bit more when we get into HK-47's trajectory. But yeah, the bounties on the Jedi and Sith, that's how we first have our encounter with Godo in the game. We get captured, right, by one of these bounty hunters, taken to Godo to speak with us, and decides, basically to spare us or, let us go because Godo thinks that Meetra Surik can help in some way bring balance back to the galaxy. So he's just along for the ride, just inserts himself into our party.
Yeah, maybe it was a good idea on paper. It's a very cerebral, intellectual kind of like character, but it's just not interesting like in the execution. Like maybe like Goto could have just been like an anti-hero or a villain that you meet on your quest. Like maybe he
Mm-hmm.
could have like influenced things on a lot of planets, like it was kind of like a side quest or something, or just like part of your quest on every planet, but he doesn't join your group, you know?
Yeah.
Um, maybe that would have been more interesting rather than be like, okay, cool, now I have this robot, that they copied the design from like episode 4 for this. Um, and yeah, so I just I don't know. Like I think KOTOR 2 has a lot of like smart stuff going on and like maybe like Goto was just one step too far. Like the
Mm-hmm.
execution could have been better.
Yeah, there's something kind of clunky about the fact that he has to come with you, because I think that, yeah, like you said, Cassio, on paper, Godo, kind of makes sense as some sort of antagonist, and that's basically what Godo is throughout the game, right? So we're captured by bounty hunters because of him, inserts themselves into our story, started up these HK-50s, and then kind of at the end of the game, he tries to stop what our ultimate goal is, and turning the mass shadow generator back on to destroy Malachor. Um, so yeah, he's basically set up as kind of like this foil for us. So I think it would have been more interesting to have him, you know, be some sort of villain that we're encountering, periodically throughout the game. Similar to like how Calo Nord was in the first game. As you're going to different locations, he shows up. He could have totally been there with the HK-50 droids, and just as this thing that you're never able to, or always, kind of escapes and moves on to the next thing. Kind of more of like this little villain. But maybe they looked at it and said, well, we've already got Darth Sion and Darth Nihilus. Maybe that's too many villains going on. I don't know. What are your thoughts about that? Would it have made more sense to have him not necessarily be a part of our journey, but still be able to be a part of our story, I guess, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like I just try to think of like even though my dream adaptation for KOTOR 2 is like a really long, you know, college textbook, I can't help but think about like what if this was an adaptation, like I'm just
Mm-hmm.
trying to simplify things and make things more interesting rather than just like have yet another person in your party, even though they're not a person, they're a droid. Because like I think he would be more interesting, like Goto, like if he just kind of was like talking about like, yeah, it broke my programming, like I was given like a choice that didn't work, kind of like maybe like a little bit like Revan, like uh Revan went to the dark side and Goto kind of like short circuited and like kind of like went to the droid dark side too, like there's interesting angles, but like when like everyone in your party has like interesting shades of gray backstory, like Goto just gets lost in the pile.
Right. Yeah, and even amongst the droids, right? Because you have kind of the backstories of T3 and HK, with the benefit of having the first game. So you don't even have to explore their stories quite so much because that lore kind of already exists out there within the realms of the Knights of the Old Republic. Um, lineage there. So yeah, I don't know. It's a hard character to wrap your head around. Like I said, do they play any sort of role in our hero or heroine's journey? Not really. I mean, they they capture us and they try to stop us at the end. So they're more a villain than anything to us, really, if you think about it. But yeah, I think there were different ways that could have been interesting to have had this character or this idea um, played out other than having them be as a companion. Even though he was chosen as your companion, Cassia, but I think that's okay. That's okay. We don't need to throw too much shade at Godo because Godo is what Godo is. And what is Godo going to get at the pie counter? I don't know, Cassia. We've done a pie flavor for all of our KOTOR 2 companions so far, but what about Godo? Is Godo having anything, or what do you think?
At first, I was like, he is like a shiny black robot, you know? And I was like, what's shiny and black? And I was like, bugs. And I was like, he'll just have like a crushed bug
Ugh,
pie. But I'm like, that's disgusting.
it is.
So
You still
in
put the image
my,
in my head anyways, so thank
I'm
you. Thank you.
sorry. I'm sorry. Um, in my mind, like, he has no reason to really eat it. He's a droid and it would be wasteful, but I think he would get like a fancy like espresso or coffee flavored pie, like, and it would have like kind of like chocolate based crust,
Mm,
and like
mm-hmm.
maybe have
Okay.
like Beskar shaved onto it, which is just wasteful. Like, how like some people like put gold onto food and
Yeah.
it's like we're just gonna eat this so it like exits our body and doesn't serve its purpose, what Beskar is for.
Yeah.
But like so you'd be paying like $50 for like 3 bites. It would be a very small, thin pie, but that's what I thought Goto would have.
Yeah, that's fair. Godo has like his big like super yacht thing. So yeah, that makes sense that he would have some sort of like extravagant uh piece of pie that costs like a million credits to get. So I kind of like that. I like where your head was at there. I said that Godo is not going to have any pie, but he would go around and knock everyone's piece of pie down onto the floor because he's a jerk. And that's that's what I have to say about Godo there. But Godo's going to come back up because he is, I guess, kind of in some ways tied to the other character that we're going to be talking about today as we go through our dueling droids, which I just thought of right there, but that's probably going to be the title of this YouTube video. So there you go. So HK-47 fan favorite is back again, Cassia. What do we know about HK?
So HK-47 was a droid from the first Knights of the Old Republic, and I don't know, people seem to like think he's very funny. He calls humans meat bags, and he was just kind of like a very uh I don't know if the right word is sarcastic, but he just kind of says things and you're like, what? Like that's sort of insane and sociopathic. But
Yeah.
um he's a bounty hunting droid, good at what he does, and then you kind of find out like the person who made him is was Darth Revan, and then he's kind of reunited with Revan, it's kind of like in Star Wars, like the villain usually creates a droid, that will be part of their journeys forever. Like, even though I kind of look back on the prequel trilogy and I think it was a missed opportunity to have Anakin, like, I think it would have been more meaningful if he created R2D2 rather than C3PO,
Mm,
you know?
yeah.
But Revan literally created a protocol droid too.
Yeah, that's right. Same kind of thing, but C3PO and HK-47 are very different. HK is a hunter-killer assassin droid. That's what the HK stands for. And basically, Revan made him to go on assassination missions when either Revan couldn't be bothered to go do it himself, or he wanted to do it a little bit more subtly, or Revan probably had a lot of eyes on him, I guess, around the galaxy. So had this droid made to go out and do his bidding, basically. And the way HK model assassin droids worked is they would basically have their memories wiped, given their assignments, and then have their memories restored again when they completed their missions. And that's kind of how that story plays out then in Knights of the Old Republic when you're reunited with him there on Tatooine. So HK-47 also, as you mentioned, Cassia had protocol capabilities, and the HK models were based off of the Systech Corporation's protocol droids. So there you go. There's a little bit of history with HK-47. Now, going into Knights of the Old Republic, HK-47 isn't really a character that you stumble across and meet and joins your party. They're already there. Like the head of HK-47 is still on the Ebon Hawk, because after the events of Knights of the Old Republic, Revan wipes the memory of HK-47, leaves it with Bastila, eventually decides it needs to go find Revan again, and goes out to travel, and then winds up dismembered basically on board the Ebon Hawk. And that is where we find HK-47. What do you think about the introduction? So we had in Knights of the Old Republic, we meet him at kind of a droid merchant thing on Tatooine, right? And here he's dismembered. What do you think about this introduction? Do you like it better? Do you like it worse? Does it make sense? What do you think, Cassia?
I think it's intriguing. You're kind of like, how did this happen? It's very video gamey, like to try to put things back together to earn things. I'm not in love with it, but it is what it is. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean it is very very video gamey because it's almost like a fetch quest then where you're trying to kind of reassemble this droid. I think it actually it kind of makes sense. And we're actually going to get into this here as we kind of talk about the character journey, but it's kind of very tragic in a way. Um, if you haven't noticed, HK is not either of our favorite characters. I don't think. Certainly very much a fan favorite. But doing some research for this, I found HK not necessarily more appealing to me in terms of a character, but his character journey was much more endearing, I think. As created by Revan. Revan's wiping his memory. Basil leaves him with the Jedi Council, and is still kind of doggedly trying to find Revan throughout the galaxy, and then winds up dismembered on board the Ebon Hawk. Trying to go out and find him. When Meetra Surik stumbles upon him and reactivates him, and he decides that he can go with Meetra as kind of his new master until he's able to put some pieces back together in terms of where he thinks Revan is. One of kind of the story beats in KOTOR 2 is that HK realizes that T3 knows where Revan is. He knows it's kind of programmed into the Ebon Hawk where he had been and stuff like that. And upon finding that out, T3 actually wipes his memory too. So it's really kind of sad, I think, in a way. As quippy and as funny as HK-47 is and is perceived throughout the games, it's really kind of a sad tale of this droid that's really just trying to find his maker.
Yeah, like it breaks my heart that T3 isn't with Revan, even though like there can be essays, like who is T3 more loyal to? Who is T3 more loyal to, like Revan or the Exile? Like who treats T3 the best, like Revan or the Exile? Like I don't know. Like it's just like kind of that gif of the lady, and there's like theorems in front of her, and like she's confused.
Mm-hmm.
And then like with HK-47, like kind of forgetting, and it's like both of these droids, they kind of ultimately serve Revan, or like do they serve the Exile? Like who do they like more, like as a master? It's
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like it boggles my mind.
Yeah, it's really kind of interesting. I thought, at least, kind of breaking it down, to look at that journey there, and basically kind of what's the motivation here for HK-47 throughout Knights of the Old Republic 2. On one hand, like I said, it's to aid Meetra Surik and to try to piece together his own memories well enough to go find Revan. But the other thing of in Knights of the Old Republic 2 is there are these HK-50 droids that Godo has started back up, started the factory. So their HK-47 finds these new 50 models very irritating, which is kind of funny that he thinks how inferior they are and gets really annoyed by them. And then there's a section of the game that was cut. You can get to it in the restored content. I'll talk about that here a little bit more in a second. But HK-47 basically goes to this HK-50 factory, recruits them, and is able to defeat Godo at the end of the game, and basically allows then the mass shadow generator to be restarted and to destroy Malachor 5 and thus restore balance to the galaxy. So really HK-47 is a pretty important player, I guess, in Knights of the Old Republic in terms of Meetra Surik's story and journey, things like that. What do you know much about the HK-50 factory, Cassia? Like I said, it had been cut from the game, but do you know much about it in that section?
Um, I know that like there was supposed to be like a lot of HK-50s, so like kind of like HK-47, but better. And I think they were silver, and it's like from a cut planet that the Jedi Master that you find, I believe it's Master Bash, was going to have all this dialogue and stuff, and also have a Padawan, I believe. And you're
Mm-hmm.
going to meet them on this planet. I've never really played the whole restoration content, but that's what I know.
Yeah, there's yeah, you can get to it if you're playing the restored content modded version of the game. You can get to it, but it's really specific how you do it. I think and go and check out like a walkthrough online or something if you want the exact way. But to my knowledge, I think um, you have to have HK-47 in your party when you meet all of the other like HK-50 droids that come and try to attack you. I think that has to happen. It has to be a light side playthrough, and you have to have like full um, kind of sway on HK-47. You have to, be as influenced as possible on HK-47 in order to trigger that. Otherwise, it doesn't even play out like in the restored content part. So you can go check that out, or there's a bunch of walkthroughs about it if you want to see more of that stuff with the HK-50. But I think that's interesting. The HK-47 is kind of this character that you have to reassemble, and then ultimately is the one that ends up, you know, kind of, I guess, saving the plan, so to speak, kind of at the end of the game here, in terms of the mass shadow generator uh, being activated and destroyed. And then bad news for HK, just gets abandoned by Meetra Surik. Like I said, this is a tragic tale. HK-47 just trying to get back to his master. And I texted you this, Cassio, when we were talking about getting ready for this episode. HK-47 basically goes on a heroine's journey. He gets separated from his mentor, Revan, and his character journey is basically trying to reunite with Revan. So,
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of when Osiris is like broken into all these different pieces by Set. Isis puts him back together, you know. So when you said that, I'm like, oh, because like Isis like is like one of the ultimate heroines of the heroine's journey, you know, and um HK-47 is just trying to get back to, I guess, the closest thing he has to family, you know, put himself back together to be whole, you know. So I
mm.
love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, it is important to make a disclaimer here for anyone out there listening or watching on YouTube. The heroine and hero's journey aren't necessarily a gendered kind of a thing. It's just a different take on that. But yeah, definitely kind of see HK-47's journey in terms of the heroine's journey, and I think that's really fun and kind of interesting because you think of these things strictly kind of in terms of the hero's journey. What we see Luke Skywalker go through. So it's neat to think of HK-47 going on a different kind of journey that is, kind of his own journey. Like I said, to find Revan. And where does HK end up after the events of KOTOR 2? Like I said, Meetra Surik abandons the poor droid and spends, if you subscribe to SWOTOR, legend, spent the next 300 years looking for Revan. And I guess they're reunited, I think, to my knowledge. I'm not super familiar with that lore. It's still something we need to get into a little bit more, I think. But yeah, 300 years of longing, trying to find your master. That's a long time, Cassia.
Yeah, because I think at the end of the day, like Revan wouldn't want to be reunited with the people like who are his family and friends, you know, or even like his descendants in SWOTOR. He'd be like, "Where's my droid that says funny things that fans like?" I'm a cool ultimate dude who like is dark and light and like is just cool and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from the SWOTOR story, then I think HK like retires basically after he finds Revan. So that's nice. I guess he gets to go in and have some time to take care of his droid self there. So that's pretty good. HK was almost brought into canon. He was originally written into the Aftermath books, but Lucasfilm nixed that. So that's how you get the character Bones, if you're familiar, or Mr. Bones, if you're familiar with those stories. Same kind of
Yeah.
thing, same kind of temperament there. But I think it would have been neat on one hand to have had, this KOTOR character written into canon in such a way. I think it makes a little bit less sense to have a droid be around that
3,000 years
long.
old.
That seems a little
Yeah.
bit long. Like the 300 years, I can get my head around. Maybe not for Revan, but for HK. But yeah, that seems a little long. So I'm okay with that. Nixing, we'll have to wait for that. Maybe we'll get HK into canon here at some point in the future. So I don't know. Do we have anything else to say about HK before we head to the diner and assign HK-47 his KOTOR 2 dessert of choice, Cassia?
Um, do you have any favorite lines from HK, like from KOTOR 1 or KOTOR 2?
I think that my favorite KOTOR one line is I'd have to look it up, but basically it's him describing love, which is basically akin to assassinating someone from like 300 yards away with a certain type of blaster. That's my favorite HK line from that. I don't really have any favorite HK-47 lines from KOTOR 2. It's not a companion I use a lot. I do, and I've said it, a couple of times. I do really like kind of the aspect of that there are these four droids on board the Ebon Hawk and they all kind of hate each other. I do really like that bit. But what about you? Do you have any favorite HK-47 quotes or quips or observations, as it were?
So it's funny because the quote you mention is actually from KOTOR 2, and I pulled it up because
Oh, it
I
is.
really
I didn't
liked
even
it.
know that.
So
Oh,
yeah,
oops,
I was
oops.
thinking I would
Fake
butcher it,
fan.
you know?
Fake fan.
Yeah. So it says definition. Love is making a shot to the knees of a target 120 kilometers away using an Aerotech sniper rifle with a trilight scope. Statement. This definition, I am told, is subject to interpretation. Obviously, love is a matter of odds. Not many meatbags could make such a shot, and strangely enough, not many meatbags would derive love from it. Yet for me, love is knowing your target, putting them in your targeting reticule, and together achieving a singular purpose against statistically long odds.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Very well said. Yeah.
Yeah, like I love that quote. I'm not like the biggest fan of HK-47, but like I love that definition of love and like it's kind of funny because I think like even though droids don't really love, like I think like the closest thing to love that HK-47 experiences is like when he's hunting, like bounty
Mhm.
hunting. So it kind of makes sense for the character and like for what the exile asked him. And it's just like a beautiful poetic answer that's in character. So it's really good writing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess if you take a step back and think of it, then he's describing love as this very long distance kind of thing. He's using it in the terms of killing one of his bounties or whatever the case may be. But really, the closest thing he has himself to love is that reconnection with Revan at some point, which is also kind of over this great distance and time and stuff. So yeah, maybe HK, when he says that, maybe he was really talking about himself. And we all need to just step back and listen to what people are saying. Sometimes I think that's really nice.
Yeah. So are we ready to go to the diner?
I am ready to go to the diner. So HK-47 walks into a diner. He takes one look at the glass case that is full of the most delicious tasting pies in the galaxy. And I don't know. What do you think, Cassie? What kind of pie does HK-47 get for himself?
And KOTOR won in our March, or not March 4th. I just like the date, March 4th.
March 4th.
May the
That's great.
4th. I was like, I think he'd be like orange with cinnamon and like Tabasco sauce on top, but
Mm,
I kind of think like HK-47 is kind of gone through a little bit of a journey, like a heroine's journey, if you will.
that's right.
And I think in KOTOR 2, even though droids cannot literally have pie, I think he would choose orange cream. Maybe it
Orange
would have a
cream.
little bit of cinnamon on top, but like he'd leave the Tabasco sauce, for another person to have.
That's right. He has softened here over the course of KOTOR 2. He's identified some love within himself. I like that. Yeah. So some orange pie, that's going to be good. It's going to kind of color match his sandstone exterior there. So yeah, that's a really good pick. I am going with kind of along the same lines of what I had for KOTOR 1, but I don't think that HK-47 is going to necessarily order a pie for himself. But he might see an empty pie tin and be very offended by whoever took the last piece of that pie, and then probably hunt them down and use those HK skills to get that piece of pie for himself, because that's just what HK is going to do. I think that's what he's about, really, at the end of the day. So
Yeah. So if you get anything from this episode, it's like how much we love Goto and how the story was written for Goto. And HK-47 went on a heroine's journey, which I guess like if we ever rename the hero's journey and heroine's journey, maybe like we could call it the hero's journey, the external journey,
mm.
and then maybe the heroine's journey, the internal journey. Like, because like I've been talking with some of my friends, kind of like about film, and like sometimes like we call it the male and female gaze. And I
Hmm.
was like, like female directors can fall into the male gaze, and like
Sure, yeah.
some male directors, like try to use what people would call the female gaze more. And I was like, maybe like we could like rename it like the objectified gaze is like because like I guess the quote unquote male gaze can be used on male and female,
Hmm.
characters, and like male and females can be behind the cameras making the decision, but like maybe the objectified gaze is like um where you're kind of just like looking at something and like not really giving uh them a voice, and like maybe the personified gaze is like when you like kind of give the people on screen agency, like no matter who's behind the camera, no matter who's in front of the camera. So yeah, there's always
Yeah.
things to think about. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense for sure. So, yeah, that's going to kind of wrap it up, I think, for HK-47 and Godo here on our companion journeys and Knights of the Old Republic 2. So not a ton of stuff to talk about here in terms of those two. I think the HK's journey is one that's really interesting, but I don't think that it plays out really all that much here in the course of KOTOR 2, other than kind of at the very end, making that kind of final stand there with his former enemies, the HK-50s. I think that stuff's
yeah.
pretty great. And, it's always a good time talking about Godo, Cassia's companion in KOTOR 2. That's the best. If I can find that quiz, I'll post a link to it. And if you're on our Patreon, which is patreon.com/Old Republic Podcast, we did a whole episode where we went through that quiz, both you and I, and did our companions. And I guess you already know who Cassia's is, but if you want to know who mine is, I'm not saying. You got to go check it out on Patreon. So I don't know, Cassia. I think that's going to wrap it up. We're making our way through the companions. We've got Canderous left. We'll probably dabble into some of the villains, and then it's going to be onto the big ones there, Kreia and Meetra Surik. themselves. So I think we better wrap this up. We've gone on long enough about our love for Goto and HK and all the things. So
And
I'm gonna
pie.
and pie, lots of pie today for sure. So check out our May the 4th episode. Let us know what your favorite pie flavors for HK and Goto are down in the comments or over on our Discord. And yeah, we're gonna head back on the Ebon Hawk, and we'll talk to y'all next time. May the force be with you.
May the force be with you.